Hi everyone, my name is Hina and I'm a pharmacist by profession, but I have interest in history and many other things. So I would like to introduce everyone some books I've been reading and mainly historic. So one of the book is called Humankind, A Hopeful History. So I'll be reading some paragraphs out of this book and we can do some discussion about it. Where did things started to go wrong? So let's begin with Thomas Hobbes. He was one of the first philosophers to argue that if we really want to know ourselves, we have to understand how our ancestors lived. Imagine we were to travel back 50,000 years in time. How did we interact in those hunting and gathering days? How did we conduct ourselves when there was no code of law, no courts or judges, no prisons or police? Hobbes thought he knew, read thyself, he wrote, dissect your own fears and emotions, and you will thereby read and know what are the thoughts and passions of all other men upon the like occasions. When Hobbes applied this method to himself, the diagnosis he made was bleak indeed. Back in old days, he wrote, we were free, we could do whatever we pleased, and the consequences were horrific. Human life in that state of nature was, in his words, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The reason he theorized was simple. Human beings are driven by fear. This is Hobbes. Fear of others, fear of death. We long for safety and have perpetual and restless desire of power after power. That ceases only in death, so it only stops when we die. The result, according to Hobbes, a condition of war of all against all. There is some other language I can't pronounce. But don't worry, he assured us, anarchy can be tamed and peace established if we all just agree to relinquish our liberty, to put ourselves, body and soul, into the hands of a solitary sovereign. He named this absolute ruler after a biblical sea monster, Leviathan. Hobbes' thinking provided the basic philosophical rationale for an argument that would be repeated thousands, nay, millions of times after him. By directors and dictators, governors and generals, give us power or all is lost. So here it's becoming interesting. Fast forward about 100 years and we encountered John Rousseau, one day no-name musician walking to prison at Viennese, just outside Paris, Venice, some area. He's on his way to visit his friend Denis Diderot, a poor philosopher who's been locked up for cracking an unfortunate joke about the mistress of government minister. And that's when it happens. Having paused to rest underneath a shady tree, Rousseau is leafing through the latest issue of Mercure de France when his eyes fall on an advertisement that will change his life. It's a call for submission to an essay contest being held by the Academy of Dijon. Entrants are instructed to answer the following questions. Has the restoration of the sciences and arts contributed to the purification of morals? Rousseau immediately knows his answer. At the moment of that reading, he later wrote, I beheld another universe and became another man. In that instant, he realized that civil society is not a blessing, but a curse. So this is Rousseau. As he continued on his way to where his innocent friend was incarcerated, he understood that man is naturally good. I like that. And that it is from these institutions alone that men become wicked. Rousseau's essay won first prize. In the years that followed, he grew to become one of the leading philosophers of his day. And I have to say, his work is still a delight to read. Not only was Rousseau a great thinker, he was a gifted writer too. Taking this scathing passage about the invention of private property, I like this paragraph. The first man who, after enclosing a piece of ground, took it into his head to say, this is mine, and found people simple enough to believe him, was the true founder of civil society. That's very interesting. I always wondered, how come we have come to possession of land and who owns this and why do we have to pay to buy a land? It seems like it started a long time ago. This is mine, and found people simple enough to believe him was the true founder of civil society. How many crimes, how many wars, and how many murders, how many misfortunes and horrors would that man have saved the human species? Interesting. Who, pulling up the stakes or filling up the ditches, should have cried to his fellows, "Be sure not to listen to this impostor, you are lost. If you forget that the fruits of earth belong to us all and the earth itself to nobody." Ever since the birth of that cursed civil society, Rousseau argued, things had gone wrong. Farming, urbanization, statehood, they hadn't lifted us out of chaos, but enslaved and doomed us. The invention of writing and the printing press had only made matters worse. Thanks to typographic characters, he wrote, the dangerous reveries of Hobbes will remain forever. In the good old days, before bureaucrats and kings, Rousseau believed that everything was better. Maybe it was. Back when humans existed in a state of nature, we were still compassionate beings. Now we would become cynical and self-interested. Once we would have been healthy and strong. Now we were indolent and feeble. Civilization had, to his mind, been one giant mistake. We should never have squandered our freedom. Rousseau's thinking provided the basic philosophical rationale for an argument that would be repeated thousands, nay millions of times after him by anarchists and agitators, free spirits and firebrands. Give us liberty or all is lost. So here we are 300 years later, according to this book. So here we are 300 years later. For other philosophers have had, as few other philosophers have had profound an impact on our politics, education and worldview as these do. The whole science of economics became premised on the Hobbesian notion of human nature, which sees us as rational, self-serving individuals. Rousseau, for his part, has been enormously influential in education due to his belief, revolutionary in the 18th century, that children grow up free and unfettered. To this day, the influence of Hobbes and Rousseau is staggering. Our modern camps of conservative and progressive, of realists and idealists, can be tracked back to them. Whenever an idealist advocates more freedom and equality, Rousseau beams down approvingly. Whenever the cynic grumbles that this will only spark more violence, Hobbes nods in agreement. So this is Hobbes and Rousseau going head to head in history. The writing of these two do not make for light reading. Rousseau in particular leaves lots of room for interpretation. But these days we are in position to test their principal point of contention. Hobbes and Rousseau, after all, were armchair theorists. While we've been gathering scientific evidence for decades now, in part one of this book, the writer is saying he will examine the question, which philosopher was right? Should we be grateful that our days of natures are behind us? Or were we once a noble savages? A great deal hinges on the answer. Rise of Homo puppy. The first thing to understand about human race is that in evolutionary terms we are babies. As a species, we've only just emerged. Imagine that whole history of life on Earth spans just one calendar year instead of 4 billion. Up until about mid-October, bacteria had the place to themselves. Not until November did life as we know it appear, with birds and branches, bones and brains. As we humans, we made our entrance on 31st December at approximately 11 p.m. I like that. Then we spent about an hour roaming around as hunter-gatherers, only getting around to inventing farming at 11:58 p.m. Everything else we call history happened in the final 60 seconds to midnight. All the pyramids and castles, the knights and ladies, the steam engines and the rocket ships. In the blink of an eye, Homo sapiens populated the entire globe. From its coldest tundras to its hottest deserts, we We even became the first species to blast off the planet and set foot on the moon. Great. But why us? Why wasn't the first astronaut a banana? Or a cow? Or a chimpanzee? These may sound like silly questions, but genetically we are 60% identical to bananas, 80% indistinguishable from the cows, and 99% the same as chimpanzees. It's not exactly a given that we would milk cows instead of them milking us, or that we would cage chimps and not the other way around. Why should that 1% make all the difference? For a long time, we considered our privileged position to be part of God's plan. The human race was better, smarter, and superior to every other living thing, the pinnacle of His creation, God's creation. But imagine again that 10 million years ago, on roughly 30th December, alien visited the Earth. Could they have predicted the rise of Homo sapiens? Not a chance. The genus Homo didn't yet exist. The Earth was literally still a planet of apes. And certainly nobody was building cities, writing books, or launching rockets. The uncomfortable truth is that we too, the creatures that consider ourselves so unique, are the product of a blind process called evolution. We belong to a raucous family of mostly hairy creatures, also known as primates. Right up to 10 minutes before midnight, we even had other hominians for company until they mysteriously disappeared. I distinctly remember when I first began to grasp the significance of evolution. I was 19 and listening to a lecture about Charles Darwin on my iPod. I was depressed for a week. Sure, I'd learn about the English scientist as a kid. So this is the writer of this book. I think he's from Holland, Mr. Rutger Bregman. But I had attended Christian school, and biology teacher presented evolution as just another wacky theory. Not exactly, I wonder later. The basic ingredients for the evolution of life are straightforward. You need lots of suffering, lots of struggle, lots of time. In short, the process of evolution comes down to this: animals have more suffering than they can feed. Those that are slightly better adapted to their environment, think thicker fur or better camouflage, have slightly higher chance of surviving to procreate. Now imagine a friendly game of run till you're dead, in which billions upon billions of creatures bite the dust, some before they can pass the baton to their offspring. Keep this foot race going long enough, say 4 billion years, and the minuscule variation between parents and children can branch out into a vast and varied tree of life. That's it, simple but brilliant. For Darwin, the biologist, who had once considered becoming a priest, the impossibility of reconciling the cruelty of nature with the biblical story of creation ultimately destroyed his faith in God. Consider, he wrote, the parasitoid wasp, an insect that lays its egg in a live caterpillar. Upon hatching, the larvae eat the caterpillar from the inside out, inducing a horrific, drawn-out death. What kind of sick mind would think up something like that? Nobody. That's who. There is no mastermind, no grand design. Pain, suffering, and struggle are merely the engines of evolution. Can you blame Darwin for putting off publishing his theory for years? Writing to a friend, he said it was like confessing a murder. Evolutionary theory does not seem to have got any jollier since. In 1976, British biologist Richard Dawkins published his magnum opus on the instrumental role genes play in the evolution of life. Tellingly titled The Selfish Gene, it's a depressing read. Are you counting on nature to make the world a better place? Then Dawkins is clear. Don't hold your breath. Let us try to teach generosity and altruism. He writes, because we are born selfish. Interesting. 40 years after its publication, the British public voted The Selfish Gene the most influential science book ever written. Oh, I was not aware. I need to read this now, Selfish Gene. But countless readers felt dispirited upon reaching the end. It presents an appallingly pessimistic view of human nature. Yet I cannot present any argument to refute its point of view, wrote one. I wish I could unread it. Oh. So here we are, Homo sapiens, the product of a brutish and protracted process. While 99.9% of species have gone extinct, we are still here. We have conquered the planet, and who knows, the Milky Way could be next. But why us? You might assume that it's because our genes are the most selfish of them all, because we are strong and smart, lean and mean, and yet are we? As for being strong, no, not really. A chimpanzee can clobber us without breaking sweat. A bull can effortlessly lance us with one sharp horn. At birth, we are utterly helpless, and after that, we remain frail, slow, and not even all that good at escaping up trees. Maybe it's because we are so clever. On the face of it, you might think so. Homo sapiens has a vapor of a brain that guzzles energy like a sauna at North Pole. Our brains may account for just 2% of our body weight, but they use 20% of calories we consume. But are human beings really all that brilliant? When we do a difficult sum or draw a pretty picture, we've usually learned that skill from someone else, so we copy. Personally, for example, I can count to 10. Impressive, sure, but I doubt I could have come up with a numeric system by myself. Scientists have been trying for years to figure out which animal has the most natural smarts. So, which of the animals are naturally smart, I guess. The standard procedure is to compare our intelligence to that of other primates like orangutans and chimpanzees. Normally, the human subjects are toddlers since they have had less time to crib off other people. A good example is the series of 38 tests designed by a research team in Germany, which assesses subjects on spatial awareness, calculation, and causality. So there's a chart. How smart are humans really? To be honest, we're not performing that greatly. That's right. Toddlers score the same as the animals at the zoo, and it get worse. Turns out that our working memory and speed of processing information, traditionally regarded as one of the cornerstones of human intelligence, won't be winning us any prizes either. I think I will continue this in my next video. Let's see how many of you like my reading.